The survivors look up at the sky in terror as a strange, massive cloud rolls in. Even more horrifying, the cloud is filled with violent, crackling lightning. Anything that gets too close is instantly torn apart without a chance to escape. And yet, who would have thought? This is the most accurate picture of the future world. 300 years ago, a catastrophic flood swallowed the entire land. All that remained was an endless ocean scattered with isolated islands. And above them, a never-ending storm dome filled with lightning becomes the ultimate nightmare for every survivor. They have no choice but to struggle on, barely clinging to life in this brutal environment. But not long after, a city called Argos rises from nothing. It's ruled by a group known as the Founders, a powerful Titan family. The city is surrounded by massive walls, strong enough to withstand tsunamis and violent storms. And it quickly becomes the safest refuge in this apocalyptic world. However, getting into Argos isn't easy. The Islanders must send their best rider to compete in a deadly race known as storm riding. Only one winner is allowed, and that single victory grants their entire tribe the right to move into the city. As for the losers, they must give up their island and become wanderers, drifting endlessly across the open sea. Even so, people keep signing up for the race without hesitation, because this is the only chance they have to change their fate. But among the struggling islanders, there's a beautiful legend that's been passed down for years. It tells the story of a mysterious hero known as the Hammerhead. He was once struck by lightning and sacrificed himself to the storm. But somehow he didn't die. Instead, he passed through the forbidden storm zone and discovered vast lands filled with life. According to the legend, he would sometimes return, breaking into the race, winning a place for the oppressed islanders. To the rulers, the Hammerhead Rider is nothing more than a traitor, a criminal. But to the islanders, he's a symbol of courage and defiance. Meanwhile, a girl named Anna has a father named Lazar, a legendary storm rider. During the highly anticipated final race, Lazar takes the lead by a huge margin. He's far ahead of second place. Everyone believes victory is already his. But then, something unexpected happens. Lazar suddenly veers off the track and charges straight toward the storm zone. That's when the truth is revealed. He never entered the race to win. His real goal was to break through the storm barrier and see the world beyond with his own eyes. But sadly, things don't end well. In a single flash of lightning, Lazar, along with his boat, is reduced to ashes. As punishment for this act of defiance, Fig Island was banned from the competition for a full 10 years. And the other contestants who lost didn't fare any better. Their islands were forcibly seized. The army of Argos showed no mercy, driving out every last survivor. One excavator after another roared to life, tearing into the stone they dug up was shipped straight back to Argos, used to expand the city by reclaiming land from the sea. Although Anna and her people weren't cast adrift into the open ocean, their punishment was far worse than they had imagined, because it meant that for an entire decade, Fig Island had lost all access to the main city. Her father's death planted a seed of vengeance deep inside Anna's heart. She saw his actions as a final act of protest, and she swore to fulfill his last wish to uncover the truth behind the storm. By her side, her childhood friend Nebraska stayed silent, always watching over her, sharing the weight of her pain. But what neither of them knew was the real reason Argos held these competitions. It wasn't to select new citizens at all. They were searching the surrounding islands for something called the life element, a substance rumored to reverse death itself and grant humans the power of immortality. No wonder every time the rulers took over an island, they immediately began digging like mad. The noble in charge of the operation grew impatient with the slow progress and proposed a far more extreme solution: deploy the army and seize every island by force. But the Baroness immediately opposed the idea. She believed it was far too risky. There were millions of survivors scattered across the islands, and if a full-scale uprising broke out, Argos simply didn't have enough troops to contain it. Sitting at the head of the table, the city lord nodded in agreement. In his view, the current system of competitions was still the safest approach. However, to speed up the plundering, he made a new decision. The number of competitions held each year would be increased, and the number of participants per island would rise from 1 to 2. The moment this news spread, the surrounding seas erupted into chaos. In their desperate fight for a chance at citizenship, the survivors poured nearly all their resources into upgrading their speedboats. As the number of competitions increased, so did the number of exiled survivors. Over time, they gathered together, forming a powerful resistance force. But their rebellion didn't last long. It was quickly crushed under the iron rule of the main city. The rebels were swiftly defeated, and those involved were brutally slaughtered. Even though the city lord could still maintain control through military force, he knew deep down this situation wouldn't last much longer. After leaving the palace, the city lord quickly made his way into a hidden chamber. He took the key handed to him by a technician and smoothly inserted it into the control console in front of him. As soon as a string of code flashed across the screen, a submarine hidden somewhere in a distant sea was remotely activated. But unfortunately, it only lasted a few seconds before the connection was suddenly cut off. The city lord flew into a rage on the spot. He lashed out at the technician, furious that they still couldn't gain remote control of the Titan warship. And without hesitation, he had the man thrown straight off the city walls. From the looks of it, this technology was directly tied to the foundation of his rule. Meanwhile, back on Fig Island, not far away, the Baroness quietly approached Anna and Neb. She claimed to be one of the founders of Argos, yet she showed clear admiration for Anna's father's act of defiance. She promised to provide them with the best possible support, but on one condition: they had to participate in the competition. Judging by the sly smile on her face, it seemed she was far more interested in Neb. In the blink of an eye, the 10-year competition ban came to an end. Anna and Neb had both grown into adults. At last, they secured their chance to enter the competition, and with the Baroness backing them, their speedboat had become one of the most advanced of all. Before anyone realized it, the day of the competition finally arrived. The track was a deadly loop circling a massive rock formation. And the racers? Not only were there top contenders from every island, there was also a group known as the Guardians. These official riders didn't just make the race more dangerous on purpose, they also monitored the entire event, eliminating anyone who broke the rules. With a single command from the host, all the riders surged forward toward the finish line. Relying on their incredible skills and flawless teamwork, Anna and Neb cut through the competition, quickly overtaking the others. But just as they were about to reach the finish line, the two of them suddenly turned their boats around at the same time and accelerated straight toward the storm on the horizon. It turned out they'd already made up their minds. They were going to follow in Anna's father's footsteps and continue the exploration. The Guardians responsible for overseeing the race immediately gave chase. Meanwhile, the city lord stood atop the walls, watching everything unfold with a cold, expressionless face. Suddenly, a bolt of lightning struck from the sky, landing directly on the bow of Anna's vessel. But unexpectedly, the ship had been specially modified. It could actually absorb the lightning and convert it into power. As the vessel sped up faster and faster, one of the Guardians made a sharp turn and slammed straight into Anna's boat, splitting it clean in half. Seeing this, Neb completely abandoned the race and dove straight into the sea to save her. But by the time he finally found Anna, she had already stopped breathing. And just like that, Neb lost the childhood friend who had always been by his side. When Neb finally came to, he found himself inside a cave. The Baroness hurried over, and for the first time, she revealed a long-buried secret. After the Great Flood, she, the city lord, and a man named Mylius arrived on these islands. By pure chance, they discovered an element capable of extending life. But in his pursuit of immortality, the city lord abandoned his original ideals. He built the city of Argos and used a submarine called the Titan to generate a massive energy barrier, a storm horizon that surrounded the entire sea. Every islander was trapped inside, enslaved for generations, forced to compete in these deadly games, all for the sake of finding more of that life-giving element. Mylius, however, could not accept the city lord's cruelty. He attempted to break through the barrier by force, hoping to find the Titan submarine and shut it down. But after several failed attempts, he lost all hope. In the end, Mylius exiled himself to Fig Island, waiting for a chance to one day break the cage. Hearing all this, Neb was completely shaken, because the Mylius the Baroness spoke of was his own grandfather. And that was the real reason she had helped him so many times before. She wanted Neb to cross the storm barrier, to reach the outside world and locate the Titan's shutdown mechanism. Only when the storm completely disappears can the trapped islanders finally break free from the city lord's rule. The Baroness urged Neb to go back as soon as possible and accept the fate laid out before him. After learning everything Neb had been through, his grandfather, Mylius, let out a deep sigh. He told his grandson that all these years he had kept the truth hidden, only to protect him from being hurt. But now that everything had come to light, Mylius had only one wish left. He wanted Neb to carry on his will and help those poor islanders escape their endless slavery. After saying everything he needed to say, Mylius handed Neb a key. He told him this was the key to shutting down the storm barrier. Neb's eyes hardened with determination. He swore that no matter what, he would fight with everything he had. Not only would he fulfill Anna's final wish and win the upcoming competition, he would also break through the storm that had imprisoned everyone for 300 years. Over the next few weeks, Neb pushed himself through intense training. At the same time, the Baroness arranged for his speedboat to undergo a complete upgrade. Before long, the final competition was about to begin. The sea churned with violent waves, and Neb stood alone, carrying the last hope of Fig Island. As the host's countdown hit 0, all the racers launched forward at the same time, charging toward the finish line. Poor Neb was clearly being singled out. Right from the start, he was harassed by the official guardians. But he didn't seem to care at all, because ever since the last race, Neb had already figured out how to attract lightning. What everyone else saw as a deadly force had become his greatest advantage. The crowd erupted into excited cheers. Neb was just about to reach the finish line, but out of nowhere, a guardian charged onto the track from the opposite direction, rushing straight at him without any regard for their own life. A burst of blazing fire shot into the sky. Both speedboats were blown to pieces in the explosion. Meanwhile, back in the city, the Lord stormed over to confront the Baroness, furious. He had already discovered that Mylius was hiding on Fig Island. Again and again, he emphasized that this criminal would never be able to shake the foundation of his rule. He warned the Baroness to know her place. If it weren't for their long history, she would have ended up just like Neb, dead in the endless ocean. But what the city lord never expected was that Neb had actually survived the collision and explosion. Following the information the Baroness had given him in advance, Neb slipped through a hidden passage and quietly infiltrated the inner city of Argos. The Baroness had already been waiting for him. She showed Neb a piece of footage. It was the very moment, years ago, when Mylius charged straight into the thunderclouds. No matter how hard he tried to imagine it, Neb could never have guessed the truth. His own grandfather was the legendary hammerhead rider spoken of by the islanders. Even though he ultimately failed to break through the storm, his courage had inspired every single islander ever since. And now it was Neb's turn to inherit his grandfather's will and spirit and charge toward those storm clouds once again. Amid deafening cheers, Neb appeared on the sea once more, wearing the hammerhead suit left behind by his grandfather. The city lord immediately dispatched a guardian squad to chase him down. They swarmed behind him like a pack of predators, closing in fast. But Neb showed no fear at all, because the Baroness had already prepared everything in advance. She had secretly stationed an entire fleet in ambush. At the commander's signal, torpedoes were launched one after another, blasting straight toward the pursuing guardians. Meanwhile, Neb successfully broke free from the chase and plunged headfirst into the thunderstorm, where dark clouds churned overhead. The lightning here was dozens of times more intense than outside. Neb recalled his grandfather's words. You're not meant to fight the lightning. You're meant to embrace it and turn into your power. Weaving through the storm, Neb moved between flashes of thunder and lightning, until at last, he broke through the barrier that no one had crossed for 300 years. In an instant, the sea fell completely calm, and right there, Neb finally saw it. The Titan warship, still supplying energy to sustain the storm. There was no emotion on his face. Step by step, calm and determined, he walked into the vessel. Reaching the control console, Neb took out the key his grandfather had given him. As the reactor shut down, the storm surrounding the islands slowly began to fade. All across the islands, the people looked up at the sky in unison, watching in disbelief and joy as the dark clouds that had loomed over them for 300 years finally began to disappear. Realizing that everything was lost, the city lord chose his end, leaping from the top of the city walls. And, at the foot of Argos, a girl in a red dress stood waiting for the hero's return. No matter how hard he tried to imagine it, Ned would never have expected this. The Baroness had used the last remaining life element to bring Anna back to life. In the end, the survivors boarded their ships and left Argos behind, sailing toward the unknown seas. And just like that, a brand new age of exploration began. And that is the full story of The Islander. Overall, the movie feels a bit messy. There are quite a few side plots that feel forced into the story. Honestly, it might have worked much better as a 6-episode series. Alright, that's it for today's recap. If you enjoyed the video, don't forget to stick around and follow the channel. And I'll see you in the next one.